أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم نور قلوبنا واشرح صدورنا بنور القرآن والإيمان والإسلام اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, we are starting with the first session of our annual Memorial Day retreat. Before starting my own session, if you don't mind, I will give you some information about the logistics, how things will be carried out, and so on. So inshallah, we will start with my session, and each session will have around 1 hour, 1.5 hours at most, including everything, QA or whatever other sections the presenter aims to perform have. It should last at most 1.5 hours. And in this year, we have a main theme, which is about, as expected, about the pandemic, as people call, about the angel of death, or about the COVID, however you prefer to call it. But the main discussions, or let's say the discussions that explicitly touch upon the COVID or angel of death will be will be presented in the second day, which is tomorrow. Today we will have 3 other sessions, somehow related to the same topic, but to have more flexibility in their content. So you may see that there's no, the explicit or a strong connection to the main theme, although the presenters will try their best to show you how the topic that is studied by them also related to this main theme. But as I said, in the second day, we will have discussions that are explicitly about the main theme. So we will have 3 sessions each day. And each presenter will have her or his own style, meaning whether you will be allowed to ask questions or not during the presentation, whether questions are reserved for the end of the session. It will be a decision made by the presenter, each presenter. So, for instance, in my case, you are welcome to interfere with your questions anytime you like. You don't have to wait until the end. But if I feel that the discussion goes tangential to the main topic, I would kindly ask you to wait until the end. But other than that, you are more than welcome to, as I said, stop me, interfere me with your questions or comments. So, if you allow me, I will then start with the presentation. And if you have some questions regarding the logistics or anything in general, please also feel free to ask using chat or contacting us. It could be myself or Yusuf. So please try to use any channel you find suitable. Also, the presentations are being broadcast on YouTube. So although we encourage people to turn on their videos, so let me highlight this, we do encourage people to turn on their videos so that we could have more lively discussion if possible. But again, since we are broadcasting on YouTube, please feel free to turn off your video if you don't feel comfortable. But other than that, please, again, please turn on your videos if possible. Okay, let's start, inshallah, with the first presentation, and I'm your presenter. This is Birkan Tunc for those who don't know me. And inshallah, I will talk about hearts of people. The hearts that we are supposed to reason with or reason through. That's an interesting concept in Quran, so I don't want to give a good definition what it meant by hearts by which to reason in Quran from the beginning, and assume we will together understand what it means to reason through or by hearts, and why I chose this topic and why this is the first session. I assume, I hope, or let's say I wish, I pray that through this discussion we will touch upon some the ways that we can interact with reality, the ways that we can think, that the ways that we can approach what happens around us. So you can think this as a discussion of a method or discussion of a style of thinking, style of approaching the things around us or whatever the topic at hand, and by which I'm willing to suggest you an alternative view, whatever the topic is. So, for instance, in our retreat, the main theme is angel of death, the COVID, and my personal suggestion through this session would be, when we think about this topic, when we think about whatever happening last a few years to all of us, let's try to reason through our hearts, through by our hearts. That would be the main message that I'm going to try to at least convey with this session. But other than that, I assume that most of you also find it very interesting, a concept like the hearts by which to reason, because in our age, let's be honest to each other, that such a concept, such a phrase doesn't mean much other than some quote-unquote spiritual circles. When we talk about the hearts that reason, or the people who reason through their heart, it sounds, at most or at best, an old school of thinking. But to me, this is really interesting, really attractive, really beautiful concept introduced by Quran. And I'm really grateful that Quran gives such a guidance to us, that teaching us how to approach reality, how to reason. And okay, let's start. Let's start with an example from Quran. And there are many verses, by the way, in Quran, maybe hundreds. I don't know the exact number, but it's definitely more than, let's say, 30. Okay, in which the concept, the heart's thinking, or the people thinking through their hearts, or maybe reasoning deeply through their hearts mentioned in Quran. And this is just one example, which says, by the way, I apologize for my the bad Arabic skills in advance. So please bear with me. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أفلم يسيروا في الأرض فتكون لهم قلوب يعقلون بها أو آذان يسمعون بها فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. A so-so translation would be, so have they not traveled through the earth and have hearts by which to reason and ears by which to hear? For indeed it is not eyes that are blinded, but blinded are the hearts which are within the breasts. This is from Surah Al-Hajj, which is 22nd chapter and 46th ayah. So another example again from Quran. By the way, if you like to speak, if you like to ask questions or make comments, you can either raise your hand, that would be very kind of you, or if you don't know how to raise your hand, just turn on your mic and start speak immediately. It doesn't matter. Another example from Quran, which is from Surah Al-Munafiqun, 3rd ayah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. ذلك أنهم آمنوا ثم كفروا فتبيع على قلوبهم فهم لا يفقهون. So two different modes of thinking or reasoning are mentioned in these two ayahs. The first one was, the mentioned through the word yaqilun, like aql, or maybe reasoning, thinking. The second one is yafkahun, which is also the same root with fiqh, right? Which basically mean, if I'm mistaken, by the way, please don't hesitate to correct me. Basically means like thinking or reasoning very deeply. So it seems through hearts, we don't only think, or using our hearts, we don't only think. The hearts, by the way, the word, the qulub. We also think or reason very deeply, like we grasp the core of the topic with it. Another example from hadith, which is narrated by Nu'man bin Bashir, which is taken from Al-Bukhari. So again, translation, I couldn't find the Arabic, even if I could, I wouldn't understand, so I apologize. It says, I heard Allah's messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying, beware, there is a piece of flesh in body. If it becomes good, the whole body becomes good. But if it gets spoiled, the whole body gets spoiled. And that is the heart. So as I said, there are many examples that the reasoning, heart are put together, or the way we approach reality, we approach to things around us, the way we live are associated, linked to the heart deeply. And what happens when we read such verses in general? As I said, we feel awkward because, in our age, at least most of us, not all of us, been through, the long education journey. We studied sciences. Some of us even studied neurosciences or any other, the science that is related to the brain, or maybe just reasoning like philosophy. And we know, at least we thought that it's brain, it's not heart. that thinks. We even, have the stories about the brain in which either certain parts of the brain or certain configurations in the brain or certain ways of, the running in the brain associated with certain kind of thinking, certain kind of reasoning. It seems like, the mapping between reasoning or the link between reasoning, thinking, and the brain, it seems very strong in our age, which leads to certain debates in religious circles, to either trying to save the phenomena or save the Quran, save the divine message by saying that, do you know what, the translations are bad. When they say heart, like when Quran says heart, it's actually the intellect that is referred to. The word, the root letters with, which also means intellect, or similar things. And of course, with verses, the first verse, for instance, I gave an example which says "fisudurin," which is like in their here, fisturi, like in their chest, in their breast. Of course, it becomes really hard to save a Quran because definitely it's not our brain that in our chest, but the heart. But I also see some, the attempt to save Quran where people would say, oh, do you know what? The sudur also means the center. It's also like, the intellect, which is in the center of the human, or even you can take it as a central nervous system, whatever. Or others, the people would take it from a historical account, historical way, and would say, oh, at that time, people thought that the heart was the thinking organ, the thinking center. And we know that in history, that is the case, especially when you look at the history of philosophy of mind, you would find the people suggesting that it's heart, through which people think. Anyway, there are all these debates, but to me, and I apologize for wasting your time with all these, at least to me, the mistaken approaches, because to me, when the Quran talks about the heart or any other part of the human, it's not about an organ. It's not about, it's not about the anatomy of thinking. The Quran is not a book of anatomy. The Quran is not a book of science. Quran is not a book of, the philosophy, teaching us the details they have human which would reason. But rather, the Quran, being a book of guidance for humanity, would use it as a metaphor or a symbol to refer to the ways that we interact with the universe. So Quran says, at least to me in these verses, that do not only or solely look into universe, just do not look into look at an animal or a people. Do not just hear them, but try to make a connection with them. Don't forget that you are a human, and in our case, the heart, it's a metaphor for a certain way to interact with the reality. I will get into more details there, but to me, at least, again, Quran, when it talks or refers to something like heart, it's definitely not about an organ in my body. It might be, there's a connection with an organ in my body as well, But this is definitely not the main point. Because as I said, when I read Quran, what I'm trying to get is to learn the correct way of interacting with my child, interacting with my wife, interacting with my friends, or interacting with my Lord, interacting with animals or trees, interacting with reality, anything. This is what Quran should teach me. Giving answers to questions that I have as a human, like when my daughter doesn't eat and start crying, what should I do? And knowing whether the heart as an organ pumps blood or have it's a nervous system its own doesn't help me. What helps in such a case, or in any case, actually, the knowing that what's going on around me is related to my the education in this life. I'm making some jumps there, like life being an education, for instance. But as I said, this session is not about a specific topic, but it's about an approach, a way to connect with things. And in following sessions, my dear friends will touch upon more about life being education, for instance. So I'm just skipping this part. So my point here, with such verses, it's not about a debate of heart versus brain or heart versus X or Z, it doesn't matter. It's rather about what it means to me as a human being. And as a human being, throughout the history, the word heart, meant certain things that we can all, connect with, that we can all agree upon. And inshallah, I will touch upon that in more detail later. So before doing that, let me ask you, how do you think, or what do you think about the question, like, how do we really think, reason, understand, or know anything? What is the mode of reasoning, or what is the way of knowing something in our life? So what do you think about that? I'm not asking, a technical question here. I'm asking rather, for you as a simple human being, what is the way that you think? What is the way you reason? Something happens in your life, you see something bad or something good that you don't like or that you, enjoy. How do you approach it? How do you think about it? How do you reason about it? And I hope some people will, raise their hand and share some ideas. Yusuf, Jazakallah khairan. Let's listen to you.
So I find myself with those feelings and with those thoughts, or like in life, when something happens, like my daughter comes and offers me this cup of tea or whatever. So inevitably, I find myself in some sort of feelings, as if I am being immersed with feelings, like as she does right now, trying to play with me and trying to offer me whatever with her toy. Like that joy is just, I don't know how, but I find myself to be in joy. Or when some hardship comes, like we got stuck in our houses for almost 1.5 years now. So I get bored. I find myself in that condition. I don't know how it's happening, where it's coming from, or is it okay that I am feeling bored or not, but I'm finding myself in such conditions. So what I'm trying to say is I'm not really doing too much to put myself in those conditions. I find myself in these conditions, but what am I going to do with them is, I guess, a secondary question. But since you are now asking, how do we really think, understand, reason? I don't know. I don't know how I am doing it, but I know that I find myself in these conditions.
Jazakallah khairan. That was an honest answer. that I don't know, I just find myself in such conditions. So maybe we can expand the question a little bit, like what is the proper way of, let's say, reasoning according to you? When you try to understand something, what should you do? Like we've been through, as I said, this education system in which we taught the different modes of reasoning. So what do you think? What is the right way to reason about anything? Like, let's say there's a problem in front of you that you cannot make sense of it, and you're trying to understand it. So what is the way to approach it? What should you use? Ali Mermer, please, let's listen to you, inshallah.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to read the translation of the verse that you were referring to as يعقلون قلوب يعقلون بها. I would rather translate it and understand it. They have hearts that they use their reasoning. They use their reasoning with their hearts. It means alongside, together with their heart. It is not the matter that we should take it reason or intellect versus feelings. Heart represents feelings or consciousness or conscience. So in both cases, intellect and feelings should work together when you ask the question, right way of reasoning, not to deny that we are a complete being and we cannot really separate some parts of us from another parts of us, other parts of us. So we have to understand that we reason all together. That takes us, it means all together. There is no heart versus feelings. That is what I understand from يعقلون قلوب يعقلون بها. يعقلون in and of itself in the Quran used for intellectual activity, but we should go and travel through, it means investigate the earth and for that matter, the heavens as well, whatever is created, as much as we can expand our expedition in the creation, in the universe. So we have to reason alongside with our feelings so that we should avoid the division making between human qualities. All qualities work together as all qualities of the Creator manifest at the same time in each and every creature. For example, we cannot say that God's power is manifesting here, but not God's knowledge. It is impossible. They are integrated with each other. So when you do something, you and I do something, definitely my body, my reasoning, my senses, my feelings, and also my all sorts of emotions will be reflected in my action. I cannot hide one side and the other. That's why we have to understand that the mercy or compassion must manifest with, for example, justice, wisdom, etc. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you. That was very beautiful, especially because, you know, that's the point that I want to converge into. So Jazakallah khairan. Okay, let's continue. Is there anyone else that want to share their, the way of thinking that's the right way to think? That is, how I was taught to think. Any other the volunteer? Like it doesn't have to be Yusuf. Okay, please go ahead.
So there is also this analytical thinking abilities that we are being taught with, and in like the way I do analysis is I split things into pieces, isolated. Like if I'm investigating a cell, I isolate it from its environment, put it into like a dish, and then in there I analyze it. So practically, when I do analysis, I am dissecting whatever I am analyzing into its pieces and isolating it from its environment and investigate it in the vacuum. So this is also practically how I do reason in general. So I don't know if this is a proper way to do it or not, because after listening to Brother Ali, I feel like I am only looking at a certain aspect of things because I'm isolating it or cleaning it up from its surroundings, which might clutter my thinking, or maybe I'm just willing to take a certain direction. This is why I am removing the piece from the whole and investigating the piece itself. But it's generally making me lose sight of what the whole is. So this analytical perspective, which I should also give its due, because in order to, drive a car, I need to have some analytical skills to get to know how the friction works, how the combustion engine works and whatnot. But this way of thinking is also making me lose something, I guess, because I am discarding many of the necessary elements from my thinking. So just to summarize, a piece versus whole, and I am focusing on the piece in the expense of losing sight of the whole.
Jazakallah khairan. I see Karim, sorry for my pronunciation. Karim raised his hand first, and then Zafer. So let's hear Karim first, inshallah.
Assalamualaikum. So on that point that Brother Yusuf just brought up, I personally see that the analytical reductionist aspect of our intellect might have to do more with the brain, that we study more and observe through neuroscientific data. But interpreting and concluding, especially when it relates to a general conclusion or an affective, like emotional conclusion, that has to do more with the heart. Hence, like knowing a little bit of Arabic, the mind well, the word yaqilun comes a little bit from there's a similar word to it as nodding, a knot, uqla, which is a knot. So it got me to think about conclusions and interpretation. You're connecting things together and you're tying them or knotting them together. I feel like that's that's why that word choice is maybe chosen for that verse. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. And Zafar, let's listen to you, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. What I understand from yaqilun is using the intellect to understand the relationships between things in this world. So we're in the world of cause and effect relationships, right? So we look at the world, we look at the relationships among things, and we understand how they are associated with one another. And then based on the use of the intellect, we arrive at a conclusion, which is like tying the knot. And so it is not possible to just use reason or to just use the heart, but it is possible to just emphasize the heart or just emphasize the intellect. For someone who emphasizes the heart, in this hypothetical person would focus on just feelings and some, the person may live in some kind of a dream world where he's with God and everything else is not important at all and things of that nature. So somehow dissociated from the reality, that external existence. That's one thing. On the flip side, another person may just emphasize reason, meaning focusing on just the observed relationships among things, and saying that I love logic, and I love reason, and I make my decisions based on reason and reason only, because I'm a rational being. Disregarding the fact, I think it is a fact, that the seat of decisions and conclusions is the heart, which is the totality of the human being. And so when the Quran says here, for example, it is saying that, yes, you look at the external existence and look at all these relationships, understanding cause and effect, but make sure that you understand how you make decisions. You are reaching conclusions, you are to reach conclusions using the totality of yourself. Understand yourself first. So that is why it is the heart that uses the intellect rather than the intellect using the heart, I think.
Jazakallah khairan. And finally, let's listen to Abdurrahman, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. I just wanted to make a brief comment about this question. The way I reason, now that I think about it, is generally I place myself into the middle of the equation and I consider what's the best for my comfort, what's going to give me the most pleasure, let's say, and then I think I know, or I have some ideas of which choice leads to that according to my own whims or desires, and that's generally how I make my choices. But I'm willing to be rectified by your explanation, hopefully.
Jazakallah khairan. I don't think I can rectify, because this is usually what I do as well. So anyway, let's continue. So yes, we have all these ideas about how we should make sense of things, how we should understand them, approach them, reason about them. And it seems like the majority of people who talk, suggesting using all different faculties, all different tools, the features that we have as human beings. One thing I realize we still make, including myself most of the time, rely on some, even when we try to combine things, we start with separation first. Like we say, the human beings have intellect, human being has feelings, but we should use them together. We shouldn't, use them by themselves or alone. We should combine them. And the separation is usually based on the separation that we taught in schools, right? The human has this analytic capacity to think. A human has the emotional way of approaching, and the best way is combining the two. And it makes sense, right? I mean, it makes sense from one perspective because this is what we've been through. That is what we taught. So when we look at the way, they teach us in schools, for instance, how we should think, the best way of, or let's say, the divine, or of course, the secular divinity, the divine way of thinking is to looking at the universe from an analytical perspective, where you will see nothing but certain numbers, certain geometrical relationships, or some, the chemical interactions, or biological processes, and so on and so forth. And when you look at the universe with these glasses, in which the human being is just a speck, is just a dot, that doesn't even mean anything. That's the best way of thinking about the reality. And when I was looking for the image that you see here, it's like every image I found puts this dot, the yellow dot, somewhere else, because nobody really knows, where we are exactly. But the point is, the point is that we don't mean anything. Like the human being is nothing, just another species. It's just, especially when we talk about Birkan or Kerim, it's even become more, insignificant. It's just one person. Like, who cares what you think? Who cares, how you approach reality? The reality is out there to be discovered. And how are we going to do by getting rid of your, the human qualities, that your personal features, that your personal preferences? You should get rid of them. You should look at the reality as it is, whatever it means, and this is the way you should approach it. This is the way you should, think. You should reason. So this is from a slide that I, kind of stolen. This slide is meant to be presented for students, probably homeschooling children. They're trying to teach, the proper way of thinking, or certain scientific concepts, where they say, when you look at these oranges, if you just say that these are oranges, or there are 3 or 4 oranges there, then you are being X. They call objective. I don't really care about these words. But if you are imposing your the own, your personal, the feelings or personal ideas, even, it doesn't have to be feelings. As you are in the equation. If you are in the equation as a person, that is called something else. They call subjective. And the one is superior or inferior to other. And my point here, some of you already know me well, that my point is not to support one view versus the other. I believe both of them are just made up words. This dichotomy itself, the separation between objective or subjective, reasoning or intellect or feeling, they are all just made up separations by a worldview which doesn't rely on the fact that human needs guidance. Anyway, these are the ways, today we teach our children how to think. That get rid of yourself, from the equation, delete yourself from the equation, and try to see the things as they are. And this is the reasoning. This is being intellectual. But Quran suggests something else. To me, when Quran talks about reasoning with heart, through heart, in addition to heart, or using heart, however you translate, and some of them are better translation, definitely. I believe, when I say I believe, this is the conclusion that I'm given. Quran is not talking about certain separations. The Quran is not talking about there are some people who use their intellect, who use their brains or analytic powers, but there are also some other people who use their feelings, emotions, and I'm combining the two. I don't think Quran is suggesting this, but rather Quran is suggesting, this is my current conclusion, and again I'm open to be corrected. Quran is suggesting rather, when you try to think, right? I'm not telling you that whether you think in your brain or your heart, it's not my business. But when you think, when you reason, when you try to solve a problem about yourself, about a reality, about universe, you should think, or you should make sense of it through your connection with this reality. This is how you should approach it. If you don't like it, accept the fact that you don't like it. This is the first step you should do. If you are talking about, for instance, a virus, then first accept the fact that you are not comfortable with what happened to you last 2 years. Start with yourself. Start with how you are embedded in this reality. Have your feelings, have your thoughts, have your wishes. Doesn't matter. But as a human, you, Birkan or Yusuf, or Ayşenur or Farah, use your heart or connect, the reason by your heart, to me, meaning start from yourself. Start from how you are embedded in this reality. To me, heart represents the fact that I am embedded within this reality. I have these all different connections with the reality. So for instance, when I see such an image, and the people, when someone tells me that this speck that you see, this is our earth. To me, Quran tells me, you can look at this big picture and see how different things that you are connected to. That everything that you see in this picture are there for you to be understood, to be felt, to be liked, to be hated. They are all for you. This is how important you are. So I don't want to waste your time more, but this is the summary of my understanding. When Quran suggests, when Quran mentions the people who reason by their heart or using their heart or in addition to their heart, I think Quran is suggesting that first realize that you have a personalized relationship with reality, that you are connected to your reality with your heart, that it is there to feel to your heart. At least you will try to fill your heart with the reality that you experience. This is what you're going to try. Right? When we interact with things, we do not, try to feel them in our, let's say, mind, but usually in our heart. So it's the way we connect, interact with the reality. And these interactions I have with things like with flowers, with Qur'an, or with tablet, with my computer, with my friends, they are all associated with different things, different experiences, like sometimes feelings, sometimes desires, Sometimes vicious wishes are really important. Ideas, something analytical constructs. Sometimes they trigger, quote unquote, our intellect, but sometimes feeling. It doesn't matter. The fact is, I guess what is the point here is that through my interactions, through my experiences, I am connected to the reality. And reasoning as a human, that we always mention, like we should approach it as a human, not as a scientist, not as a, let's say, a believer, as a, a Muslim, but as a human. This is what Quran suggests, right? Most of the verses that starts with, the guidance, it starts with the calling humans, not believers. And reasoning as a human, or thinking as a human, or trying to make sense as a human, to me is to follow and listen to these experiences, whether it is a feeling or an idea, whether it's an desire or an analytical proof that occurs in my mind. Follow them, listen to them, and see where these experiences call me, where they take me. And using my free will, using my human free will, I act by choosing which path I would follow when I listen to them. Because most of the time, there are multiple paths that I can choose when I experience something. I see a child dying, and I hate this. And there are different messages that are carried to me through this experience. One could be my creator is unjust, killing all these children. Another one is telling me that I am created in a way that I don't like injustice. So I choose which path I follow. And this is what I understand when Quran talks about, they have hearts by which they reason. Embedding myself or realizing that I am embedded in reality. I have certain feelings, emotions, desire, wishes, ideas associated with these experiences, and then listen to them, what they tell me, where they calling me. Right, as Quran says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَبَلَغْنَاهُمْ بِالْحَسَنَةِ وَالسَّيِّئَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْجِعُونَ. Whether we experience something good or bad from our perspective, they all call us somewhere, and we choose where to return, where to follow when we listen to them. So before, I have a few more slides just to, give some examples. Maybe we go through together through these examples. I see we have at most 30 minutes left. So I would prefer listening to your ideas, your comments before I go further. I remember Karim was raising his hand. Sorry, I couldn't stop before.
Well, I did it quickly, so just note it so it doesn't get stuck and maybe disrupts your lecturing. I wanted to say that with what you have eloquently described right now, how do you combine that with concepts or ideas that we have to follow the older generations, we have to follow the best of generations before we have to follow this scholar and that scholar, with this idea that you propose that you follow your experience and you follow your reaction to your experience? Because one could argue that doing that might actually sway you away from the path, because there's one path that everybody needs to be on it, and you need to follow who's on that path.
Jazakallah khairan. Like a perfect question, really. I really appreciate that. Before I share my ideas, comments about this question, is there anyone who want to, take the first, maybe try?
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
First, thank you for this subject. This topic is very interesting, and the question is very deep question, and it's for me it's very difficult to answer this question and to make a difference between heart and brain and all this stuff. But one thing I want just to add, the first example for a human being reasoning in our Quran, he was Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. The questions, because you asked how we think. First, when you ask the good questions, that started thinking. For me, the question is very important and the answer. As Sayyiduna Ibrahim used to do, asking question and thinking and reflecting. So thinking for me, okay, as you said, what they teach us in our education system, okay, logical, analytical. Me, I'm engineer based on 1 + 1 = 2 and all this, but this is not the reasoning of the Quran. Reasoning, I think also that I share with you also your idea that the heart, it's ya'qilun. But when Allah said for brain, it's yatadabbarun, albab, yatafakkarun. الباب يعني the brain, the core, اللب, it's more than عقل. Allah used albab in the Quran, but يعقلون is connected to the heart, because what you said, عقل in Arabic is connect. You connect things. You can't be outside something and you want to find a solution. You have to be embedded, as you said. This connection with the nature, with what the environment is يعقلون بها. Wallahu a'lam. This is what I understood. But in the level of the brain, it's al-albab, yatafakkarun, yatadakkarun. All this bring our analytical brain. So, but the people, they still look in, they make research and discovering that the heart is not that the pump, but something more than that. Anyway, I just want to add Sayyiduna Ibrahim as the best example of reasoning, and Jazakumullah kulla khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Please go ahead.
I appreciate what the sister said here, and going off of the example of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salam, and relating it back to what I can tell from my own life experience is that blind imitation, taqlid, which what the brother was referring to, or what I think, what I was hearing from his message, it never leads to genuine belief, and it leads to crisis of faith, poor iman. And I think in this, for me, is my answer that, it doesn't matter for me who said it. I don't care if Ibn Arabi said it. If it doesn't, if there is not a connection with the only thing that I can even confirm, which is my existence, and that my life is coming to me, then there is no real witnessing and confirmation in that. And it's not a real, genuine answer to my question. And therefore a real, genuine relationship with my Lord. So I don't think we can blindly imitate. I think that we have to confirm it within our real life experience.
Jazakallah khairan. Really important, like things being, conclusions being authentic. authenticity of our conclusion, authenticity of our iman is really important. Before I share my ideas, Ali Mermer raised his hand. Let's listen to him, inshallah.
I would like to briefly present my thought on the Prophet Ibrahim's reasoning. We call it reasoning, but the Quran doesn't call it reasoning. The questioning doesn't have to be presented and performed only by reasoning, because the same activity of the Prophet Ibrahim ends up with La uhibbul afilin. I don't love those that set. What does it mean? It means we cannot really separate reasoning, understanding, intellectual activity, and also any word of the Quran which refers to this kind of activities, yafqahun, yaqilun, yatafakkarun, ulul albab, does not necessarily mean that they should be independently isolated and to be used. That is one point. Following the best of people, rhetorically, it sounds beautiful. But who decides who are the best of the people? Again, even if you say, I follow the Quran, still you decide to follow the Quran as a whole human being. And then you decide who are the best people to follow. So again, this is on you to decide. Even if some says, I follow the revelation, that is your conclusion, and you decide about it as a human being. Though, for example, not necessarily that everybody agrees with you. It shows that people are free to choose. So we have to, first of all, make sure that I am the one, the agent, who decides about the conclusions that I reach. Thank you.
Jazakallah khairan. Both the question and the explanations are really important. So what I think, I guess that's a really important question again, like because all these years when it comes to religious thought, when it comes to the iman matters, the only thing that we are given is at least the biggest, let's say, the thing that we are shown or given is the following certain paths that are already established for us, right? The deen, religion is already completed. Everything is there for us to follow, to live even. That, you know, everything is very solid, very clear in front of us. And all we need to do is not to go outside the boundary drawn by certain scholars. But now I'm like, who am I? I'm not even a scholar. I'm suggesting you that you should start with the fact that you are, as a human being, have these infinitely many connections with the reality, and through all these connections, you are given certain messages, and your responsibility is to follow them. And this may sound as if, you know, I'm suggesting that forget about all these scholars, forget about all these paths that are driven in front of you, drawn in front of you, and just, you know, create your own path. And how are you going to do this? Just follow your whims. What you like, what you don't like, that's enough. But rather, what I'm trying to say here is that This is my state of being, that I find myself in a state that I'm connected with the reality, with the thousands of things, thousands of ways, and each associated with certain feelings, ideas. As Yusuf said, I find myself in this way. It is not me that creates these feelings or these ideas, these wishes, these desires. I do not create the desire to live forever, eternally. I find myself with this desire. And I find myself in this flux of, the pointless or meaningless feelings, emotions, ideas, intellectual, the derivations. And it's my responsibility. I find myself in this way. It's my responsibility to make sense of some of these. I have to make some choices. Otherwise, I cannot live. That's another part of, another thing about my humanity, that I have to make sense of things, that I find myself in this way. There is no escape from that. But at the same time, I realize as a person, I'm not able to make sense of all these things. I have to choose my path. I have to listen to all these experiences and follow them wherever they call me. And I have to choose where I'm going to return. But most of the times I cannot make this choice. I cannot make this choice. Every time I try, I realize that I make wrong choice. Hence, need for revelation. Hence, need for prophet. Hence, need for scholars to guide me, to help me, to hold my hand and telling me that, oh, Birkan, you know what? I find myself within the same experiences as well. I guess that's the biggest, maybe the most important thing about the prophet, that he is being a human just like me. He been through the same experiences that I do. But he is taught, trained, let's say, again, I'm making these jumps, but at least theory, at least the claim is that he is trained by the creator of all these ideas, of these feelings, of these wishes. I need such a person who been through same experiences, and he is educated specifically by the creator of me, my experiences, and who will teach me how to navigate through these experiences. So, like such an idea that as a human, it's your responsibility to embed yourself, because this is your reality. This is not something you have to do externally, the extra. This is what you are. You are embedded in reality. And you have these experiences and you have to make sense of them. This is your responsibility. It's your choice to choose, as Brother Ali said, it is you going to choose where to go. But at the same time, you need guidance. You need divine guidance, meaning no other guidance can help me. The guidance has to come from the one who created all these questions, who created all these wishes, desires, hatred, or the joy that I experience. The guidance must come from him. Again, hence our need for prophets, or our needs for scholars who has been trained by prophets. If there are other questions or comments, I can wait. Otherwise, I will just go through a few examples, but I will skip some of them since we don't have much time. So, okay, we are, let's say, going on the highway or any street, a beautiful car, maybe it's us driving it. or someone else, hopefully. And going like a crazy with high speed, and then a crash happened, people die or injured, and we experience something like that. This is something we don't like. So what kind of experience we have right now? Like, what is the way that we should approach this as Quran teaches us? Because we know from the secular point of view, everything is almost very clear, but even if there are some mysteries, there are not much excitement there. That a mass was moving with a certain speed, a crash happened, all these calculations, or maybe some ethical perspective that the guy shouldn't have drove the car that fast, or maybe a political perspective, or a perspective from a social perspective that he or she needs to be punished. All these different ways of looking at this experience. But how we look at this experience as a human being. And I like to give the stage this to you. I like to hear your ideas again. I'm sure we all experience something similar. It doesn't have to end with an accident. But every time we drive, or every time we go with car, we see some people, driving too fast, causing some danger. How do you approach such an experience? What this experience tell you? Where it calls you? Any ideas, suggestions?
Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Birkan. Saira here. Thank you so much. Your talk is really inspiring me, because I'm a mental health therapist by profession. And personally, and in my observations, I see there are loads and loads of experiences when our clients or ourselves, our family members, the greatest accident that I can think of is when somebody is taken over by sudden death, the ultimate fatality. And when people suddenly are left with injured bodies, and they didn't mean to cause that accident, but they ended up becoming the victim of it. And so whether we look at it from theoretical physics point of view, I understand that's one of my interests, or a philosophical, ethical point of view, or a qadar and theological point of view, or just psychological, continuous, ongoing trauma, like we are seeing our brothers and sisters in Palestine having been open to for over 7 decades. As a woman, as a Muslima, as a therapist, as a psychologist, as a person myself dealing with the cumulative losses of people around me, and as I see from vicarious trauma, we are humans, we get affected by it too, so do our professors and other people in the medical field. And because scholarly ponderance like yours, the way you are talking about all this in the light of Quran, it makes us think that Allah Ta'ala says to us that, qadar is going to be there, you have to believe in it. And what is the preventive measure that I could take to the extent that I do have free will? So when I become a cancer patient, or if I become a widow, which I am, both of these in the last 2 years, I had nothing to call upon these calamities in my life, but here I am alive, and still somehow or the other, life goes on around me, and I'm being asked to reconnect back with life. So both as a healer and as somebody who had been, I guess Allah Ta'ala tests people's faith. So I say to myself, in the light of your direction and discussion, I just created a Quran appraisal list last night. I couldn't go to bed because Palestine was on my mind. And I said, what is Quran telling me? I need to connect with it. And everything that you are saying and all the talks that we have with Dr. Ali Marmar, I have had the privilege of attending a few, and Dr. Receiving Noor, Dr. Amina Boganaya, all of the direction that I think of as leading me towards understanding life and life experiences or lived experiences, mine own or others. There is a random plan that you and I cannot avoid, that is qadr. But then there is free will based on Allah Ta'ala's ihkam and ideas around what we can possibly avert by taking preventive measures, by going for the treatment, by avoiding harmful behaviors, and then leave the rest to Allah. So when I look at it from this perspective, I say that I am a library of all my lived experiences. And being that we are trained as teachers and as scholars and as therapists, mental health providers, to be particularly attuned to our students and our clients and people around us and our own experiences, cognitions, feelings, affective system, as well as our somatic system, how badly we get triggered when the cumulative trauma takes a hold of us. So I think we are a Rolodex in that sense of all the lived experiences up until a certain point, which is why cognitively prior knowledge ideally is supposed to help us not fall in the same trap or accident again and again. But yet you see so many people overtaken by substance use disorders, or people taken over by some personality or behavioral habitual and habitual sequence of their lifestyle, that they can't avoid those accidents in their life. First, second, third, fourth divorce, first, second, third accident. But the passion sometimes, if you see, I'm changing an example like you do, skiing. Skiing to me and free falling from the sky to me is like the kiss of the death. But if you ask a very compassionate skier or a sky falling person, they will say this is what they live for. So their perspective and their attitude towards those life-threatening, deliberate actions is one of welcome. I want to go through you again and again. Whereas accidentally, as this example that you posed, it's haq that if I deliberately come in the way of a car, I'm going to get crushed. But it's also Allah Ta'ala's qadr that despite me falling from a 30th story building, somehow or the other, or 20th story building at least, I still survive. Or there are people who go through coma and they come back. I mean, I know I have touched death probably 10 times last year between all the different illnesses that I encountered as I was grieving. But between the groups that I joined, the mental health and the spiritual and the writing groups, and talks like yours from my Turkish and Malaysian and Dr. Malik Al-Badri in Islamic psychology and all the other, luckily Dr. Nasser's, I could hear and Brother Umar Suleiman and all the sheikhas and ustadas that I've joined, and I've heard Dr. Yamina Boganaya's talk, Dr. Ali Marmar's talk, Suhail Leher's talk, Wahadaniyat, go back to Allah, go back, all the return is back to Him. So in that sense, I think my sensations, my memories, my cognition, and my affect is bound to the ultimate destiny that I'm expected to live through. And I have to accept it, and that's where my Islamic surrender comes in. And if I don't accept it, then I'm going to be perpetually in a spiritual dis-ease. And I choose not to go through that. I hope I made sense. I hope I didn't just ramble on.
Not at all, Jazakallah khairan. That's really beautiful to hear your thoughts, your ideas, especially coming from someone with your experiences. Jazakallah khairan. I see Yusuf raised his hand. Please go ahead, Yusuf.
So yes, yesterday in another discussion, the last 6-7 verse of Surah Yasin was being discussed, and there was an interesting point that was made there. So in there, there's this challenging mindset who says, looking at a decayed bone, saying that who's going to resurrect this? Like an isolated event such as the one you are showing, somebody crashes the car and gets troubled with it. Why is this happening? Or who is going to do that? But again, as a response, Qur'an is inviting the challenger to look at the bigger picture, saying that how were you created in the first place? Don't you look at it? Because I am looking at what happened right there. Let's say, I mean, God forbid, maybe I'm in this car and then this accident happens, and I am very much troubled with this event. But when I'm troubled with it, the reason I'm troubled with it is because human has this narrow perspective, and I'm just looking at what's happening right now, right in front of me, detached from the rest of the picture. And this is something that's ugly in and of itself, pretty much like if you take a paragraph of text or a book, and in the book there is a paragraph, and in that paragraph there's a word which says ugly. The word ugly sounds ugly. And if you think about the word itself, it's just no beauty in the word itself, it's ugly. But the way it's located in a sentence and the sentence located in a paragraph and the entire book, maybe it's representing or describing the beauty and contrasting it with ugly so that the beauty becomes more beautiful for me. But just I need to see where it looks like. So in there, since this is my general attitude, when I challenge the meaning or the creation, the creator, I am really getting lost in, and it's like human has this tendency for sure. Everyone of us has this tendency. I get lost in a particle, a specific portion of the existence. And Quran is inviting me to, and as you were presenting, reasoning with heart is, for example, if I was in that car, I would dislike it because it makes me uncomfortable. So a part of me dislikes this accident. But Quran is inviting me to look at it with my whole humanity, and also not only look at this small frame of time and space, but rather how it is located in the rest of the creation, because the creation is such that everything is being given within harmony. And this is why, as Sister Saira was mentioning, Qadr makes sense when you see the measures all around. If you are talking about a single frame, you cannot really talk too much about a measure, like the word ugly. What sort of a measure you can talk about the ugly if it's not located in a paragraph, it's not located in a text, right? So Qadr makes sense once I see how this event itself is really fitting into the bigger picture of the whole creation taking place. And my life, like even I can take it as today I am troubled, but today is a part of all my life. Not only that, it's a part of the whole creation that's taking place. So in that, with all my feelings and whatever I have, intellect, and so if I consider all of them together, as very beautifully the conclusion of Surah Yasin is doing, we created you in the first place, don't you look at it? And that says, don't you see right in front of you that the fire is being created out of a green bush? So these are the things that are taking place in front of you. Why are you focusing too much on that rotten bone? The rotten bone was once a live bone. So why don't you see that it's part of that continuum? Why are you making it like a detached from where it comes from, where it's going to, and just focus on here as if it exists in the vacuum, and try to just get with your emotions and everything, you're attacking that moment only. So I guess if I were in that car, definitely initially, these were the thoughts that would come to me. I would dislike it. I would complain, why is this happening to me, sort of a thing. But as I am now invited by Quran to see what's beginning, what's end, where is this frame fitting in the movie, the overall movie that's happening and I'm part of, then, and also get engaged not only with my instant feeling right at that moment, but I have multiple other feelings. Then I have this feeling of appreciation or feeling of care, feeling of mercy, if I bring all of them in, and then bring my intellect into the picture to say that, well, how do you connect the dots? And then as again, Sister Saira was putting, how about my willing to submit to all those conclusions? I might get connect the dots and come up with a decent explanation or draw a picture, but do I really want to go with that understanding? Do I really want to submit to that conclusion? So once all of them comes together, then I start and I think this is what Qur'an is inviting us to, and you very beautifully presented it as under the concept of قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا. So once all of them comes together, then only I can get content in the life.
Jazakallah khairan. Very beautiful. So for the sake of time, we don't have much time. I will just quickly go over, what I'm thinking about such an experience, for instance. And let's assume I'm observing it from an outside. But the point is, at least the Quranic wisdom suggests that even if I'm observing from outside, experiencing something like that, it is still about me, that how I experience it. Okay? My Creator, when He creates all these things in front of me, again, I made a big jump that everything is being created. My Creator is not gossiping with me about other people. That these are being created in front of me, and all these emotions, all these ideas, wishes, desires are created in me so that I can make sense of it, and so that I can, through following them, return to Him or reach to a conclusion wherever I'm going to reach. It could be, for instance, a denial or unbelief. It would be my choice. But I see such a car, the luxury, let's say, a car going too fast. And as a human, when I reason through my heart, meaning when I'm trying to embed myself as a human in the reality, that the experience I have, I see that the person, just like myself, seeking for recognition, trying to prove herself, trying to prove himself, just like myself. I'm trying to find some symbols that I can, hold like a luxurious car so that I will be recognized by people. This is so human. I share the same thing. And this experience would remind me that, Birkan, you are seeking for recognition. Birkan, you are trying to value yourself. And by the way, the world you live, the life you live in, most of the time is not enough for you. You don't like it. You have to change it some way. You have to play with the limits. That is, I am like who I am. As a human, most of the time I find myself trying to transgress the limits, the boundaries. There are some limits on speed. Who cares? I can go faster. I need to go faster because this is not enough for me. Which again reminds me the fact that I am running from something. As Quran asks, where are you running to? So this experience again speaking to me, reminding me about myself, that I am trying to reach somewhere, trying to run from somewhere. Where I am is not good for me. I am running towards somewhere. And then, accident happens, which I don't like. There's a dislike that I have there that is created in me, which is somehow related to the, that of myself, my own death, which reminds me, which I don't like, which I am afraid of. So this experience reminds me, telling me that, Birkan, you are afraid of that. When somebody dies, you don't like it because you don't like your death either. Sometimes you get angry with such an experience to the guy or, the way the things are being created because you don't like that. You don't like destruction. This is the way you are created. And all these thoughts, all these ideas would also lead you to the fact that you don't have control on anything. Your death is waiting for you, and all you can do, just wait for it. And ironically, we are running towards our death every second. So that's the only thing I can do. I don't have any control over anything. So I need someone who can control everything. I need someone who knows that I don't like death, that I don't want to vanish, and someone who can control, someone who has knowledge power over everything, that I can surrender. That I can say that, yes, this is the thing, I can rely on. So looking such an experience with your heart, meaning, embedding yourself in this reality, in this experience, and listen what it tells you about yourself, which would eventually lead you or lead me, let's say, in my experience, in my case, to searching for someone that I can rely on, that I can surrender. And saying that whoever created this, whoever created all these feelings, all these ideas in me, must have a solution for me as well. And when revelation comes, or when a prophet comes with the solution, now I'm, all my ears open, wide open, and I'm listening. Oh, tell me about the solution. So I will finish here, and then Shahrani family will speak, inshallah, as a concluding remark. But just to summarize, what I'm trying to say here is that I'm talking about the way you start, your initial step in your reasoning. Don't forget you are a human. You use your humanity to make sense of things. This is the first step. When you talk about, either a chosen, so-called chosen death, or death or destruction without any choice, but a death. If this is what you are, experiencing, or something joyful, something really joyful, especially for parents whose children don't eat, refuse to eat. When you see some children eating happily, that's the best experience you can have. When you have such an experience, do not jump into conclusions about your creator, about qadar, about something else. First thing, don't forget that you are human. That you like, there's something that you like in this experience, there's something you don't like in this experience. Whatever this experience is calling to you, just listen to it. That should be the first step. And to me, this is what reasoning by heart, or through heart, or by using heart in addition to heart means. Jazakallah khairan. That's the end. So we are over time. I really apologize for that. If you don't mind, I will conclude here, because I see there's no hand anymore. So if there are some questions that you need to ask, you can ask after I finish the session, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, everyone, and subhanaka la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Al-Fatiha.